Welcome back to the Forthright Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Ian, and with me, as always, is David. This week, we are going to be talking about Elder Scrolls, specifically Skyrim, and what sets that one apart from the other ones that we've played, and why is it such a big game that's being resold for the fifth time this year. Um, so to start off, you kind of have to really really just know the whole Elder Scrolls library. There's a ton of other small games in between stuff, but there's really just five main games, which is the original Elder Scrolls Arena, Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and then Skyrim, and then now there's Elder Scrolls Online. Well, everybody waits for Skyrim 6 or Elder Scrolls 6, which everybody's probably going to mistakenly call Skyrim 6 or something, because Skyrim was the one title I think got the masses into Elder Scrolls. The titles before that, I think it was still just either you're a fan of the franchise or you're a fantasy nerd that wanted to play a fantasy RPG game to check it out. Because the unique thing about this is that these are all first-person player fantasy RPG games, or first-person view, FPS. So when I first played these games, I got into it at Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. A friend of mine, Robert, showed it to me on PC, and then it finally came to Xbox. Because I think it was the original Xbox One game, right?
It was on OG Xbox,
Yeah.
and they did a Game of the Year edition, which had the DLC.
That's right. And that's the first one I played. And finally got all the way through that title, and then, which I thought was really good. Then 4 I thought was a huge step up from obviously 3. Which was also a launch release for the 360. And then I feel like Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 5 was so good because the things that I was introduced in 3 and 4, which were really unique and cool with Bethesda games, was all in 5. But the things I did not like about Morrowind and Oblivion were removed from Skyrim. So it's they finally had the perfect formula of this is how this game should run. Which title did you jump in on, David?
I mean, I played Morrowind, but I was a big Burnout Takedown fan, so I was playing that and other games at the time, like Doom 3. I tried to get into it again during Oblivion, but I couldn't really get into it. I think part of me was disappointed that Patrick Stewart, his character, his voice acting pretty much ends in the beginning.
Yeah.
So Skyrim was the first game I played. I played it on the 360. I actually beat it, and then I went back um, to a previous save because I actually wanted to play all the content first. And I would play it every winter, which was kind of a fun way to go about it. And honestly, I knew a lot of people talked about it, but it was really. I actually think. Well, I feel like we can go into this a little more later, but of all the Elder Scrolls game, Morrowind, you could see, was them really finding their footing with the game design. Oblivion was them kind of improving on that recipe, and Skyrim was, in many ways, the peak version of that recipe in terms of how they utilized it. And I think that's why Skyrim was enticing for me. It was very unique, it was very distinct. A lot of games kind of had that Morrowind Oblivion sort of look. It wasn't the same like Dark Alliance, right? Kind of felt like a Dark Alliance, but in a better world. But Skyrim was, I mean, I can't think of any other game that was like Skyrim, where you have massive dragons flying overhead in a decent way with decent animation, decent game design, decent voice acting. Um, and it kind of even was almost like it's a weird comparison, but kind of like Shenmue, where there's a lot of stuff you can go through in every building, in every room. You could pickpocket a lot of stuff and people. It was really interesting to me to kind of see that recipe play out, and Skyrim was just, I think that hit the mark for me.
Yeah, for me, I think when I was first introduced, especially to Morrowind, how the game was described to me was, hey, it's a first-person fantasy role-playing game. Um, you're just gonna be dropped into a world and literally, there's no starting level 1, level 2. It's just you'll run into stuff and quests will happen. And it's the first game where I felt like they actually delivered on that promise. Whereas most games, there's tutorial little personality tests is what Bethesda kind of does to help you create your character. And then usually the first person you talk to, or one of the first few people you talk to, will point you in the direction where you should go next. And you can go there, or you can just wander off and do whatever in these games.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that it's designed in such a way where, at least with Skyrim, I got to the point where you can wander into a place, and yeah, there could be some hard enemies in there, but things are kind of scaled at your level. Where the problem with Morrowind, I felt, was like one of the first missions I went on in there, I was way underpowered and like could barely do anything. Like Morrowind, I had to beat that game with cheats, and I had to beat Oblivion with cheats. Skyrim was the first one I was actually able to play at the game's designated difficulty without having to do anything to cheat some annoying system that was in there. With Morrowind, it was just the scaling of depending where you went. If you went someplace a little bit too earlier than you should, you're just gonna get slaughtered. And since like it's not like a RPG where you're like an MMO on like World of Warcraft or something where like you can see the level of the creature you're fighting. It was just, oh, I have to go in this ruin. Oh, these machines just keep fucking me up, and I don't know if they're super strong or if I'm super weak or what's going on. To where I had to use the cheat code to like constantly regenerate life and stamina and magic as you play. That way you wouldn't die unless you got your ass really beat down. That's how I had to get through that game. Oblivion, which again helped improve on their recipe, like you said, but they added like two mechanics that like after Oblivion they never used again. One was like the conversation persuasion game mini game, like where you had to talk to somebody and try and say the right thing to get them to like you on a meter, so that you could win a persuasion check. It was an interesting concept. It's one that like they highlighted a lot in that game when they were selling it. Um, but ultimately, it was something that you just once you got the ability to bribe people, you just pay them off rather than play that stupid game to persuade people. But the other mechanic, the one that I hated the most in Oblivion, was the fact that weapon and armor broke. Which, like, okay, here's this new
Yeah.
element that, yeah, you if you're realistically playing and you're getting beat up all the time, your armor would break or your weapon would break. But the thing is that when you add the elements of, hey, you have a limited amount of stuff you can carry, you have a limited number of spells you could use or something, uh, but you don't want to walk around carrying a ton of armor, a ton of weapons to quickly put on because the one you were wearing broke. The only other way to fix it was you had to get repair hammers. But I don't think you could craft them. You had to like buy them from people, like you would like buy lockpicks. Um, but they weren't like in every store. Like so, there's you had to figure out where you were going to supply them at. But basically, you needed that because any major fight you got in, your sword would break halfway through it, and then you would have a weapon, and you wouldn't really realize that until you see that you're just punching the guy all of a sudden, and you're not using a weapon to hit him with. So with that one, I had to use a glitch to make infinite number of repair hammers. It was the only way I could play through it, so that I could just repair all my weapons all the time and my armor immediately if they broke on me, instead of having to carry either a ton of random weapons or a ton of different armors. Again, when Skyrim came around, that mechanic was completely gone. So Skyrim, you have, well, I think what really brought it to the masses is the fact that Oblivion was somewhat popular, but Skyrim, you brought in the dragons, right? The way they marketed that game, wow, you throw dragons like Western, more Western medieval, medieval time type stuff that people can recognize. People are gonna flock to it. The thing with Morrowind and Oblivion and all of the Elder Scrolls games is they take place in their own fantasy universe, so there's nothing that's recognizable to anybody, right? It's completely fresh and new. But when you sit there and say, "Oh, look, we got dragons you can kill," you're like, "Oh wow, first person game that I can actually kill a dragon," because they didn't have how many other games have really had like a decent dragon that you got to kill that was highly popular. I mean, Dragon Age, kind of, sort of, but it's like a turn-based thing, like live action. I got to kill this dragon that's trying to kill me, type of thing. I think Skyrim delivered on that promise that it gave in the ads for like you're gonna fight a dragon. It's gonna land in a town, and you're just gonna have to fight it there, and that stuff actually does happen in the game. So I think it's one thing that
You
drew a lot of
know,
people to it.
one thing I think actually helped draw people into it was in Morrowind Oblivion, and I don't know, I've never played the previous ones, but like you were just kind of like a guy in the universe. But what I thought was good about Skyrim is you're the Dragonborn. You're this guy that can speak the language of dragons, and that's how you have these additional abilities that most people don't have. And I think there was a lot you can play with from a gameplay dynamic because you have that. I can't remember what it's called. Those guys that are on the mountain and they all just do these
Oh,
chants
the
and they speak.
Greybeards.
Uh, Greybeards, yeah, the Greybeards. They're able to speak as well in the dragon's language, which can cause this damage and do all these things. And uh, the lore that kind of helps set up is really cool because it kind of gives you this idea that maybe humans and dragons at one point were connected, like in this way that kind of separated them from every other animal on the planet. Because there's no like, dogs or wolves or whatnot that can speak dragon, right? That's just a rare set of people and dragons. And that lore was very distinct, I would say, from anything else that's been before it.
Yeah, I would say
Um,
the lore in Elder Scrolls is definitely very, very deep. But like, you can go Tolkien deep on like the older games and that type of stuff, where
yeah,
it feels like it's homework having to read up about stuff. Where Skyrim, I guess, approached in such a way where it's like, if you want to, you can choose to read all these books that you find and learn more about the universe, or you can just play it. You'll get the gist of what's going on and like where people's beliefs fall and why they believe that and everything. I think the element of the superpower that they gave you was something new to the series. Because you being the Dragonborn means like you're the superhero now in this world, but they give you a moderate power. It's not one that's so overpowered that you just use it the whole time to kill everything. But it was, to me, I felt like it was like a good medium ice power that you could build up to be pretty useful. But for the most part, like I played through the game using like maybe 1 to 3 of like the shouts out of like the list of like 30 or 40 shouts that you can actually get, because it's like if you want to play a game in a way like you want to do a specific build, which a lot of people like to do with RPGs, they give you all the options to do a specific build. For people like me, when I play these games, I'm not trying to build a barbarian or a mage or a rogue or whatnot. I look at it as I'm trying to build like the most average normal person who's like me, who tries a little bit of everything. So like I'm gonna find what works and stick with the thing that works with my gameplay, instead of having to build a fire mage and make sure I don't use any ice spells. It's like, well, my guy uses 2 swords and magic if he feels like it, and then if he wants to, he'll shut you off a fucking mountain because that works all the time.
yeah. You know, One thing I want to talk about with all of these games is bugs. Because one of the reasons I never played Oblivion is I started playing, I maybe got like 12 hours in, and then a buddy who recommended it to me, I was like, oh, hey, how's your game save going? He's like, oh, it's funny you say that because I think he said something about like he got bitten by some creature, and then this created this bug. Like his game save basically was busted because he wasn't able to progress any further.
Ah,
He was basically
but he
stuck.
also probably had a lot of game
And
saves in
yeah,
there.
he might have, but he said he couldn't figure out which game save, and he didn't want to go back so far that he'd lost like over 100 hours.
Oh
So
yeah.
he was just like, I'm
So
done.
I know exactly the bug you're talking about, because what this is in Bethesda games, and this is from like most likely maybe even Morrowind, but I know at least on the Xbox, like from Fallout 3 and forward, they've been using the creation engine, I guess is what theirs is called, or it might be something else. That is their proprietary graphics engine. They've just been tacking more shit onto it and not actually rebuilding one that works. So the bugs carry on from generation to generation across their games. One of them is their save bug, which is some games like Fallout, um, New Vegas constantly autosaved for you, and it would constantly make saves after save after save. If you had a ton of saves, eventually it would take like 2 to 3 minutes for you to open a door and load an area, because all that save data is eating up all the space for the game for some reason. And then come by Skyrim, they fixed it so it wasn't creating a bunch of new autosave slots everywhere. It was just saving over the same one all the time, same 3 all the time, right? And then you would
Yeah,
save your game. But what would happen in Skyrim, which will, as soon as you get super high, it'll break some part of the game, and there's some quests you can't complete properly because of it. To where what happens is, I don't know what the exact number is, but it counts up. But I noticed like my game that had like over 100 saves in it, I have run into more bugs. So the higher the number gets, the more buggy the game gets. So now, like when I'm going through Skyrim, now I'll go up to like 10 saves, and then I'll delete all my saves and all the backups, and then I'll save again. And they'll start the counter at 1 again, because of how their system works, if their saves get too big, then the game starts breaking and falling apart after it. And it's been known forever. And this is like the only way I can think of how to bypass that massive bug, and that's just built into their engine system. So almost any Bethesda game using that stuff, using that engine, has that issue.
Yeah, it's funny you say all that. I didn't run into those, but on Skyrim, I remember explicitly I had like I forgot what it's called when you have a person with you and they basically are doing missions with you, and
Just a
I
follower.
had them with a follower. I had a follower, and I went to another section, right? And I think I told the follower stay behind because I didn't want them to die. So I was like, all right, stay here. I'm gonna go over clear this stuff out and then come back. I come back, they're gone, and I'm like, where the hell did they go? And in the game it says, they'll eventually go back to like a place you have base, like you set up as your base. They never showed up. And every time I would try to take on a new follower, like, oh, I can't, you already have a follower. I can't, you already have a follower. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't have this follower. I don't know where they are. They're not where I left them, and they're not at my base. I have absolutely no clue. And I think I lost about 13 hours on that one.
That sucks, especially if they're carrying some of your
Yeah.
shit that you want. Because most people use
You
followers
know,
as just mules. And if they got lost their follower, the follower disappeared, it'd be like, well, there goes all my shit, dude. They had it all.
and I did give like her really good armor and stuff. It was really disappointing. And I remember I went back. Yeah, that one was rough. That's probably like it's funny we're talking about all these issues because the game is really loved, right? It's got all these bugs. There's kinks to every game along the way, but at the end of the day, you really have these massive maps. You have these in-depth, well-written characters with their own voices, right? So, like by Skyrim's time, every line of dialogue is voiced, which is crazy when you think about how that all fits on a DVD, with music, um, uh, like all that animation. I mean, granted, it's a lot of the animations reused, right? Like guy just walking away, like guy's like, "Hello, sir, how can I help you?" Like
Yeah, I mean,
pretty basic
this
stuff.
game I think comes really close to being like what everybody imagines being being able to experience a fantasy world should be. With the few technical things that pop up that remind you, oh yeah, this is a video game. Like hearing the same voice over again, hearing the same lines over and over again from different people. But I will say is that I think Skyrim is one of the best games for this, and especially in the series of Elder Scrolls, is that it's one of the most like lived in worlds. When you walk into a place in some games, it feels like everything's happening because you're there. If you're not there, then nothing's going on. With Skyrim, when you walk into a town, people are doing their jobs, they're running their schedules, they're doing that. That was something that they introduced in Oblivion, but it's very subtle. That people have their own schedules and stuff, and you never actually really have to use that information. Where in Skyrim, there are quest lines that you could go and use that information, like stalk somebody, see where they go all day if you had to do an assassination on them or whatnot, or you can just run in, like stab them as soon as you saw them and run away. But that's the thing, is that the world felt lived in, and that's one of the reasons that probably what really hooked me on this game was a quest that I think they kind of repeat throughout some of their games, but I've only ever found it in Morrowind. Courtney found it in Skyrim, where like I'm walking around somewhere just exploring the wilderness, or I might be on a road or something, and all of a sudden you hear a faint yell, and it gets louder and louder and louder, and then you hear a loud scream and a plop. And if you look around, like, oh, there's a dead body behind you now, or in front of you. And basically, the quest was in Morrowind was that you walk around, this body just falls down beside you. You go check it out, like, what the fuck happened? And there's a note on the guy. He says, "Oh, yeah, I invented You couldn't figure out how to fly in mage school, so he invented a potion that lets him jump really high, but he didn't think about how to slow himself down." So basically, he jumped really high, and you ran into his random landing spot. Funny thing was, is I could take that potion he had and learn his recipe and make it myself, and then use a levitation spell just not to crash land at the bottom. So as soon as I found that guy, I did, and I just followed. It wasn't even really a quest setup. It was just, hey, here's what happened to him. Here's his recipe. I went and I remade that potion, and then I spent the rest of the time jumping across the map instead of having to walk everywhere. And that's something that felt completely random. I didn't do something or hit a switch to trigger it. It was just, oh, okay, this thing's going to happen to you here. You didn't have to be a certain level. It just happens. That's how a lot of the quests are discoverable in Skyrim too, where you walk into a bar and the guy talks to you and says, hey, let's have a drinking competition. and that then turns into this major big quest line that you weren't expecting to be anything, you know?
Yeah, there's. It's funny you mentioned the quest lines because I mean I don't really know the other stories, but with Skyrim, right? I mean, obviously, I think people know this enough that we don't have to worry about spoilers. But you're basically a convict who's about to be put to death when the dragon shows up, and then suddenly, people discover you're the Dragonborn, and your fame kind of rises, and
That's
you kind
always a
of have
theme with
these gifts.
that's always a theme with Bethesda games is that you start off as either more when you're a convict who's being let go. In
Hmm.
Oblivion, you're a prisoner in the right prison cell at the right time, and in this one, you're a prisoner who, like you said, right before they're about to kill you, dragon attacks and all hell breaks loose and you get away. So you always start off as this blank slate of, well, you're in trouble with the law or something, or you've been banished somewhere. Here you are. They're gonna and you get away to go do whatever the fuck you want after that point. You're not obligated to do anything if you want to. Um, like I said, like that's what makes these games so much fun to play is that they give you a slight nudge to which direction to go, and you say, okay, cool, I see where I need to go, and then you can just run off and do something else. And you'll run into random things that will cause quest lines to start or tie you back to the main quest line. You never feel like there's a level here, a level cap here, or even though like it does have levels in the game, you never feel like you have to strive to a level cap, or hey, this is a level 76 area, I can't go there. You don't feel confined like you do in most MMORPGs or linear RPGs out there where you're not going to be able to freely explore. Or they have the illusion of freely exploring where it's like, well, I can't explore because I'm not the high enough level. I'll just get killed as soon as I walk into anything over there, you know?
Totally, yeah. And one thing I think is cool is I think the main quest in Skyrim isn't as memorable as the side quests. I particularly like the Dark Brotherhood. A lot of people who played it always reference the Dark Brotherhood and the characters that are within those quests. But one thing that I personally found to be the genius behind the game design of Skyrim was in Skyrim you have the dragons that are sitting here killing everybody. Innately humans want to help humans, right? Especially if we have a common enemy that's kind of killing us, right? For if humans are being killed by alligators, people kind of feel like they have to band together to fight the alligators, and they do a good job of setting that up. And then on top of that layer, right, they give you these abilities, which are dragon speak, and that ends up kind of becoming like this privilege that you turn into a duty, or you can use it to do messed up stuff to
Yeah.
people if you want. But that's I think the subtle brilliance of their game design when they came out with Skyrim.
And that's the thing is with these games, like what we've been talking about, right? Your experiences are different than my experience. The stories that you experience, even if we're doing the same quest lines, are different though, right? Like if you complete did you complete the Dongar, the vampire hunter one?
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
So like you can join vampire hunters, right? I was a guy who joined the vampire hunters who became a vampire to kill the vampires and still be on the vampire hunter side. How ridiculous is that? I mean, you don't have to play that way, but you can. Because I literally became a vampire, was kind of helping the vampire side, and then in the end, I just didn't do what the vampires would do. I did what the Dawn Guard would, and like I saved the world from vampires, and then I spent the rest of my days as a vampire in Skyrim. Like most people, most games will say, okay, you're gonna join this faction. If you do that, you're now no longer able to join that faction. If you do this, you can't do that. If you're a werewolf, you can't be a vampire. If you're a vampire, you can't be a
Yeah.
werewolf or whatnot. And then basically they force you to have to go back and replay the whole thing to experience those other quest lines. The Elder Scrolls gives you the option to basically do everything. You might have to jump through some hoops to like do things like go from werewolf to vampire, but there's a way to do it somehow in the game. If there's a either just going to be like a hidden thing in a book or something, but there's a way to figure it out. I remember in Oblivion, if you became a vampire, you had to go talk to a lady who will then tell you like, okay, go collect this stuff, and then I can make you a potion so you can no longer be a vampire. Because
Yeah.
after a while, you realize, oh yeah, this has some negative effects that kind of keep screwing me over. Um,
Yeah, I had to ask for that because I was like, I don't want to be a vampire anymore. This is it's like I don't know. You have to like becoming a vampire means you kind of have new demands of your character, and it's like, oh my god, this is kind of difficult. I want to just go back to being normal.
Yeah, and like if you're a werewolf, you can no longer get like an experience bonus from sleeping at night because you always have a restless sleep. The funny thing is to cure the to cure a werewolf, there's a quest line to cure it, so you and everybody gets cured, or you can become a vampire instead. And they'll cure your lycanthropy with vampirism instead.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool quest lines in there. I mean, they have the Dragonborn DLC. I like that one. Dawn Guard. Like I said, I only played it on the
Yeah.
360, and unfortunately on the PC, that's like the original 1.0 release, and then they did the special edition, right? And
Yep.
then now we have the re-release of special edition, which has mods. Because special edition was when
They let you put
Bethesda.
mods in, and now this one's going to come with, hey, these are the most popular Creation Club mods. We're going to put them into the game for free for you, um, automatically. So like, that's the other thing that's kind of made Skyrim the kind of the unique flower here is it has a huge modding community. Like modding has always been around, but people were able with Skyrim to do a real good job at creating their own quest lines, creating items, and just building whole new stories for people to experience, and not as well as going in and updating the graphics, updating mechanics, adding new skins to everything, new some of them created new mechanics. Some of them went and like they took the things that they didn't like about the game, like smithing, and like took that out of it, so like they could just be able to smith anything all from the get go. Um, the huge modding community is what kept the game alive for so long to where they could get to a special edition re-release. I feel like because the game came out in 2011, and when you beat these games and you feel like you've done everything you can do, these games will just sit on the shelf until you go back and want to revisit some of that stuff. Um, but the modding community kept adding new stuff to the game, so there's constantly a new flow of new things to do. So it was almost like how a game as a service works, where they keep adding stuff, but the modders do things so much faster and so much better that it's like the game constantly got new things to do in it as people were running out of things to do. Where usually games as a service is they give you like a game experience that lasts for like a day and a day and a half, and then you have to wait like 6 months for the next update for something new to do. Because they didn't spend enough time giving you the single player game experience because they're too busy thinking about how they're going to get you to spend more money down the road. Whereas since the game Skyrim was built as this is a single player experience, we're not, and we might add some DLCs to it later, which I think those came out almost over a year after the game came out. That
Yeah, and I was gonna say, speaking of the community too, it wasn't even just the modders, but there was this real, not even sure what you could call it, but the modding culture kind of created its own culture of its own when it came to, like, for example, you had Manslayer, right? I remember I sent you that guy that made those "We'll Bang Okay" videos of Mass
yeah,
Effect, and that guy has a bunch of hilarious Skyrim videos where he used mods to compile what he made in these machinima, sorry, videos. And then you also have guys that literally just cover mods and talk about how ridiculous of them are, like MXR mods.
yeah, that's
There
right.
are,
That's, you think about that,
yeah.
right? There's so many mods made for this game that so many different people use that there are people who made a living in the early 2010s reviewing mods that they didn't even make. They just had a YouTube channel of, hey, these are the mods I installed this week, and made money doing that. That's an insane amount of people doing mods and things going out there, and that modding community like just skyrocketing. To have that paradox there is just crazy. That's why I think the constant flow of new content that worked and worked well that modders were making, then DLC drops, and it got them all the way to the point where like, cool, it's been not even 10 years, like what, 6 years, 7 years maybe. They were like, hey, here's a special edition, and then what we're hitting the 10-year anniversary now. And that's why we're getting they're selling it to us again. Um, so they sold it on 360, sold it on Xbox on the next generation, Xbox One, um, as the special edition, I believe. And then they're going to be selling it. Then they sold it on Alexa. It might have been free. I don't know. But when the Super Bowl commercial of Key and Peele playing Skyrim on his refrigerator or on his Alexis device. Everyone thought it was an April Fool's joke. It was actually a real app that they built in. So yeah, you can literally play Skyrim on your on your Alexa. Then now they're going to come out with another special edition for the new generation, to the point where it's like, when I saw this one come out, I'm like, all right, can we just get Elder Scrolls 6? I don't want to buy Skyrim again. I have a good enough version. I don't need to buy it
How long
again.
has it been?
2000,
How long has it been?
2011 was when the game came out. Because then they also had to
Man, 10
re-release
years.
it on Switch and on the other platforms as well. And then their special editions, and now another special edition. It's been a decade. Elder Scrolls 6, but they wanted to do their Starfield game first, which isn't coming out till next fall or next holiday season of 2022. Once that's out, then they might start talking about if they've done anything or we're doing or have started finally on Elder Scrolls 6.
That is rough.
Yeah, I remember when they announced that at E3, like everybody's so hoping for Elder Scrolls 6 announcement, and like, oh, we have this Starfield, and it's like, I don't want another sci-fi game from you guys. We want Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it'll be like GTA, where we had GTA 5 on 360, PS3, then it was on PS4 and Xbox One. Now that you have enhanced versions basically coming to PS5 and Series XS, and and I mean you do have a it's funny we talk about modding, because the modding community is what's kind of kept GTA 5 in the limelight when it comes to a lot of the PC side of things. Um, but going back to Elder Scrolls, one thing that is interesting to me is there's a modding community called Skywind. They're making a mod where they make Morrowind look like Skyrim.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, I can't remember how many people. Last I checked, it was dozens, but it might be over 200 now that I even look, that have worked on this in total. And they're enhancing graphics, redoing voice dialogue. I mean, it looks like they've overhauled the game in a similar way where we saw it go from the original Skyrim to the special edition. I'm still curious to see if that'll get released, because those guys have been working on it for years. But this goes to show you how much love each of the games gets, except for Oblivion. I feel like Oblivion doesn't get that much love.
That's the thing. It's like Morrowind and Oblivion. They're very much the same format and games of their era, but like I said, they had mechanics in there that were annoying. That like got in the way of you progressing through the game the way you wanted to. Or I feel like Skyrim took those, realized like, all right, this is annoying. Nobody likes this. Nobody likes this. Let's just take that out. So Skyrim is a game where, yes, if you want to run around as a fist fighter, you can run around as a fist fighter, and your skills will can go up from that type of stuff. The other thing is the perpetual. It's kind of like perpetual learning, but basically, there's mechanics in the Oblivion game or the Elder Scroll games that everything you do helps you go towards your next level. So it's not like you have to do a certain amount of quests and get experience points, or you have to farm a certain item or something in order to level up. It's you level up just by doing stuff. So, but one of the things that people don't realize actually changes, because there's not an actual indicator for it, is your use of like stamina. Like you'll always be able to, every level you'll be able to add more points to your stamina or to your health or to your magic as you go. That's kind of been constant throughout all their games. But the more you run, the better you get at using your stamina and running, to where you can be a low level person who's never bothered to level up, but be able to run for a long time because you've constantly kept getting your stamina up by running. It's a tiny mechanic there that makes me that I like that concept of like, hey, the more and more you do something, the more and more you're going to be good at it, and like you feel that with, hey, you have to walk everywhere. The more you're walking everywhere, the better you're getting, and faster you start moving. It's just you just don't notice it because there's not a indicator telling you, hey, you can now move 5 miles per hour or this miles per hour now. There's no indicator, but the game does actually do that as the more you play it. Just how your normal skills level up the more you use them.
Yeah, I would actually say to kind of add on to that too is there was a certain natural design, particularly to Skyrim, that it really helped as a gamer, even if you're not familiar with games in general. And you have this aspect of what you're talking about, where like the more you do it, the better you get. And the funny thing is, like the more you lift weights, the stronger you get. The easier it is to do what you did before at the beginning. The other thing too is like this is like the way the brain works is the more you practice something, like let's say you would do math a lot, right? Or reading and writing. The more you do it, at first it'll use more parts of your brain, but the more you've done it, it uses less and less parts of your brain. And then there's just one area that does it and it processes much faster than it did way at the beginning. And that's a natural process that occurs in humans that they put in the game design and you don't even think about it because it just comes naturally, right? And kind of I remember we were talking about part of the reason why we were discussing doing this podcast on Elder Scrolls was I always think about what is it about games that gives you something to walk away with. Even movies, what is it about it that like once it's done, what do you really walk away with? And Skyrim was interesting and even Oblivion and Morrowind because you kind of come from nothing and you build up something out of it and then you can accomplish these amazing things that if you just spend the time building yourself up, like you said, you want to run a lot, run a lot. You want to be a good mage, do a lot of mage like tasks, right? Just do whatever you want to do and you'll be best at that. And eventually you might become unstoppable, which is part of what's so great about it. And Skyrim was probably the only game that taught me this much about life, which sounds really weird to even think about it, let alone say it. But building yourself up is doable, whether it's physically or mentally. And then you also have the aspect of exploring the world. I know you like to travel. In the game, you travel and it's fun, but how many people actually travel in real life and try to see things that are different? There's so much that the game teaches you that is beyond the game. And when the game is over, it kind of still leaves you thinking if you actually pay attention to the details and look at real life.
Yeah, and I feel like you get people definitely take a lot out of these games, of like lessons learned and how they can apply those things to real life. But I also feel like it's the game. It's one of the first games and only game franchise I feel like that really truly gives you the play your way model. Like everybody says that about their game. Oh, you can play it your way. You can make any type of build you want. But it's like your game comes down to me, uh, what maxing and minning number bars to get something to work right. That's not fun. Where Skyrim, I'm not thinking about how do I max up this or max up that. I'm just playing the way I want to play, and those natural skills of what I normally do progress faster. And I realize, okay, cool. I like to use lockpicks. I like to use magic. I like to use one-handed weapons. Oh, I don't do archery very often, but hey, I get benefits if I focus on doing some of that if I want, and I get to mix and match my character build, not to be a specific archetype that the games program that I have to fall into, but I can make my build anything I want, and I can still get from the beginning of the game to the end of the game without feeling like, wow, I need a barbarian for this because I can't do that. Or I think like Cyberpunk does this to you, where it's like, hey, if you had this stat, you could have done this thing, and this would have been a lot easier. Where Skyrim never blocks you by a stat check or anything. It's just, well, if you're super strong or if you can jump the right way, you can climb this fucking mountain, or you can't. It lets you kind of just do your own thing, and it'll let you by. And you may have to, somebody who's really strong archery may just have to use bows and arrows all the time, versus the person who just wants to run up and hit everything with a blunt object and kill it. You can do that. It just lets you do it. It doesn't sit there and say, well, this enemy has magic protection, so you can't use spells. And I was like, no, you could sit there and electrocute it maybe longer than you would normally have to, but you can sit there and kill it. It'll still take the damage. There's nothing that feels like what you're doing is useless and you shouldn't do it. Like even when you're fighting the dragons that pop up, which are kind of like little mini boss battles, it's never a tedious boss battle because if you're super strong, you can actually kill them fairly quickly. And there's never anything like, well, I'm using fire on a dragon and it's not hurting it. It's like, no, it hurts it. It just hurts it more. The more health it loses, the more you'll see the impact of it. Where the stronger spells you use, you'll see this bigger impact of it. You know, I never. It's very rare at points where, other than the bugs, that Skyrim pulls you out of the role playing experience because you need to do a dice roll because everybody's trying to recreate the D&D experience. And it's like, I don't want a dice roll. I just want to live in the world, dude. Let me live in the world. And I think Elder Scrolls is one of the few games, and Bethesda is one of the few game makers out there that can make these worlds and make the gameplay fit that way for you.
Yeah. especially to the level of detail they accomplish between the characters, the lore. I mean, books. You can collect books, and I'll just kind of reference one of them because in Skyrim, I literally collected every book I came across, and I remember reading this one about these like den of thieves, and this guy basically like finds out there's a spy amongst his thieves that's kind of giving information out. So he invites everybody that's in his circle to this dinner, and they eat, they drink, and finally at the end of the dinner, he tells everybody at this table. And this is, by the way, written from the perspective of the spy, which is what I thought was fascinating. And the the spy is basically referencing how this leader is telling them, all right, everybody, thank you for coming. I just want to let you know there's a spy amongst us, and I've poisoned his drink. He just doesn't know it. And the only thing that will cure you is this cup in the center of the table. And the guy starts sweating. He's thinking about, holy shit, like, I'm going to die. I've just drank this poison. This guy's found me out. And before he can react, one of the guys at the table just panics, reaches up, grabs the cup, and starts guzzling it, and says, like, you're basically saying, like, it's me, right? And at that point, the guy then tells him, actually, that cup was the poison, and now you're going to die. And this actual spy gets to survive the whole ordeal. And it goes to show you how well, like, the main story is written pretty decently. I feel like the side stories are written better, like the main the side quests and that like Dark Brotherhood, Dawn Guard, but those little stories too just add like an extra layer to the story that is missing from so many other games. I'm not sure there's really a way you could top that easily.
Well, that's the thing, is that those little stories are very interesting. They're very, and like, they're concise and really good. And sometimes like you can find multiple books that will tell you even a longer story if you want to. And that's stuff that some people will never experience in this game because they didn't bother to read any of the books, which again makes this also unique. What's also nice payoff is because every Elder Scrolls game is a game that you can just jump into. You don't have to play the previous one to understand what's going on because these games are set hundreds of years apart from each other. But one of the nice things is when you play the later games like Skyrim, which is the fifth one, you'll find books or you'll hear somebody talk about a legend, and that legend will be what happened in the last game. Because I think in Skyrim, everybody talks about how Martin Septim sacrificed himself to save the world, right? Well, that was the last. That's the last main quest in Oblivion, is going through that whole ordeal. So if you do jump into and you do look at the lore, you read the history books, or you listen to conversations closely, you get those little Easter eggs about your past, about the past exploits that the other games had. You'll get these nice little side bit stories, which I think is the key to making a world feel lived in. Where, like, World of Warcraft was doing this thing forever, but now we have like a lot more games that are games as a service out there that are so quickly thinking of how do we make money on you as we go, that they don't deliver a full-fledged single-player experience that makes you wanting more. It gives you a short experience that you're like, okay, that was fun. What else can I do? And then you're waiting for them to spit out more content at you. And if they did it right, they have a lot of content that they can spit out quickly. But if they did it wrong, you're waiting months and months for stuff. I think game companies haven't figured out what that sweet spot is, because you have your hardcore gamers who beat every game like in a day. Like, it could be a 70-hour game or whatnot. They'll find a way to speed through it and beat it in a day and a half or something. And then before the first week of sales is done, you have a group of people who are already complaining that there's nothing to do in the game. And it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter how long the game is. There are people who will get through it super fast, either because they've been reviewing it or this and that. And the press will end up saying, well, I beat this game last week. It just came out. But there's not a whole lot to do after a week. And then review scores end up tanking and shit like that. I think you have to have enough stuff in the can and have a roadmap that you can actually stick to. Unfortunately, everybody's been making roadmaps without the content being made. So it's like, yeah, in like 3 months we'll have this made. It's like, you haven't even started like concepting that idea yet, and 3 months go by and they miss their roadmap. The roadmap, I think, is going to build like the customers' expectations, but like so far, everybody who's done that has not really delivered on their roadmap because they didn't have stuff in the can already. Skyrim came at the perfect time where there were no such things as roadmaps or games as a service yet, and had Bethesda let the modding community actually make mods and sell them on their own market without trying to steal the creative work or shut it completely down like Disney or someone else would. To where you had one game that had constantly new flows of content coming out with it, had a super long single player experience that you could make as long as short as you wanted. And then by the time you ran out of stuff, you had a whole plethora of mods to do. And then they came out with their own DLC that they sold. Then you bought that, and then you had more mods on top of that, on top of that new DLC that they gave you. More interesting stuff kept coming, where it was a never ending string of just new content to where they could keep re-releasing this game. Now, if it came out Skyrim 2021, like brand new game concept, I guarantee you that it would have a roadmap that they would probably fail and miss on a bunch of stuff. And the game would probably be a lot shorter because they're trying to build their roadmap stuff out by the time the game's coming out. Definitely would not do as well. I think Skyrim came out at the exact right time for it, and was able to be like one of the few like last true RPG games that are all thought on the world and its lore and not on how do we make money down the line. Because nowadays a lot of games it's buy this extra stuff, buy this, it's coming out in 2 months.
I actually think, and this is just me, I don't think people will get Elder Scrolls 6 for at least another 5 years. I actually think in many ways Skyrim was like Left 4 Dead 2, right? It's like their, I can't remember the last game that came out for Half-Life that was really from the Gordon Freeman storyline. It was during the episodes. But like that recipe is so hard to replicate at a level that exceeds the previous. You're going to disappoint people. And I don't know if they have that capability right now to really figure that out, because it took them a lot of time. Like when Skyrim came out, I feel like we really got Skyrim 0.5, and then the modding community kind of came in and gave us 1.0, because it was like, whoa, like now you're really tapping into the potential of what this world and the design, the characters, the lore can all deliver. Because developers are trying to make money. They're trying to crank out as much as they can, as fast as they can, at a level that they find balanced in that whole goal, right? So a lot of things design wise kind of get lackluster, and players will kind of have questions about, like, isn't the Dwemer people supposed to be set up like this, not like the way it is in the game at this part? And then some people will go and create a mod that fixes it.
Yep.
I think that's part of the reason why Special Edition became so critical, and why this new Special Edition with mods is also critical, because I don't know if Bethesda has the creative people behind it to create that universe and expand upon it in a way that really gives it that push. Whereas the modding community, who you said eats and breathes this like sort of world, right, and lives in it, they know how to think about it. They know how to accessorize it. The people who cover the mods and discuss it, they're kind of the ones that funnel where things go creatively with modding, and where people should focus their attention. I don't know if Bethesda can do it anytime soon. I think that's going to take at least another 5 years, especially with Starfield in the mix.
Yeah.
Might even want to say 6 to 8.
Well, I honestly think Elder Scrolls 6 is way down the line. We're never going to see that for, like you said, maybe another 5 years. I feel like the one thing that Bethesda is like the victim of here, though, is because what brings success to Skyrim for over a decade is not just their work, but also the work of the modders, for sure. Like modders have a good chunk of Skyrim lives because we exist. By letting them do their own thing, that's great. Their game constantly gets replayed, more stuff in it, more people jumping in or entering that pool, right? To where you're at a point now where you can just resell the game over and over and over in different editions, and people will just buy it. Much like Mario games, people will just buy Mario game because it's the Mario game, right? People will buy Skyrim because it's just Skyrim. But where they're screwed at is that because they've let that happen, they can't really sell mods themselves, because there's going to be a modder who'll just make their own mod of what they're trying to sell. So like that's why the Creation Club kind of fails for Bethesda. Is you only have like two choices down this road. Either you shut down the modding and all that stuff so you can make it yourself and make your own money. But again, modders do things a little bit faster, or they take their time to do it right the first time, so you have a really good nice finished product when they put it out there. Most people get mods for free. So like, if you're going to let them exist, you can't monetize mods in the future, or you shut them down. Your game does not live as long, and then you can sell all the mods yourself that you want. But again, the stuff that Bethesda even made for themselves and their creation code that they would sell, like nobody wanted. It's like, oh, I can get armor skins anywhere. I can commission somebody to build me an armor exactly how I want it and put it in the game versus me spending $5 on your crappy like little bit tweaked steel armor or something, you know. Um, so that's where they kind of failed at business wise, but I think that's why they're actually reselling the game constantly, is because that's all they really can do is resell it with the most popular mods already built in. Resell it again with now the next graphics level and something like that. They'll keep reselling this game forever, probably, dude. I'm sure there'll be a Skyrim special super ultra edition 10 years from now.
You know, I was going to ask you. I don't think the DLC or the Creation Club stuff you purchase carries cross platform. So if I have it on Steam and I have it on Xbox One, I don't get to carry across those content items, right?
No,
That I
no,
buy.
because the ones that you buy are for the specific
Yeah,
platform you're on, I think. I
that's
I
brutal.
don't know for sure because I never really looked into the Creation Club stuff. I mainly just played around the mods I can get on the Xbox, um, which some are good, but like modding it does cause possible crashes and whatnot. So you have to kind of find the proper mixture of which mods you want to have to make everything work out properly. Um, but I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, why Skyrim is the beast that it is and why it's being resold again for like the fifth or sixth time in 10 years. And even though I'm finally at the point where like, I'm probably not going to buy this, but but I think with Xbox, they're going to give you a bunch of stuff for free and not make you buy an upgrade.
Game Pass.
They'll make you buy, there's a version you can buy for like some other stuff added to it, but you'll get some of like most of the extra stuff they're adding to it automatically, which is nice. But I probably won't buy another version of it because I feel like I have the definitive version I need of it for right now. Unless like they rebuild the whole game in like Unreal 5 and change the look of it or something, which is basically building a whole new game. I'm probably not gonna buy another Skyrim, but I can appreciate what's special about it. So that's pretty much our show this week.
You,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing real quick. I actually tried to play the online game of Elder Scrolls, and the only thing I'll say about it is the lore and the universe are intact, but the problem is because you're playing with other human players who who are basically in a sense equal to you. You don't have this sense of power
Yep.
that you have across all the other games. So, personally speaking, if I was going to recommend somebody jump into Elder Scrolls, I would recommend Skyrim.
Well, I think Skyrim's the most balanced because, like what you said, you go online, you have the issue of everybody's the hero, right? But the online game is very much like the first four games, where like you don't have a superpower. You can find an item that can make you superpowered, but you don't inherently have one that you can develop, which that's what Skyrim gives you. But then you have just a bunch of people running around with a bunch of stuff with superpower weapons all over the place, right? All the high level people. But I think the biggest issue I have with online is that in Skyrim, everything was very cinematic. You talk to somebody, would maybe get a little bit closer to them, not super close like Oblivion would, and you have a conversation with this person, or you stand next to somebody and hear them talking. Online was designed for PCs first, so PC players don't care about immersion as much as at least as much as they talk about how they want stuff immersive. The systems that are in almost all PC games break immersion. The fact that when I talk to somebody and instead of getting the cinematic person camera view and then them just having a conversation with me, they go in a box on the left and I can see all their text. I have to make options of what I'm going to say. Like, I'm now in a PC game. And it's like Skyrim solved this problem. You went a step backwards going with online, where yes, the graphics look a little bit better, but everything's in a PC box. I can see health bars, creature levels, and all that. You've turned it into a game again and not an immersive world. So yeah, Skyrim I think is the perfect balance for anybody new to Elder Scrolls. Like, hey, play Skyrim. You'll enjoy that. You feel like you're powerful, and you'll feel like you're progressing through the game the entire time you're playing it, and you'll get to have fun, unique experiences that when you talk to somebody, even if they play the same quest line, they may did it differently. That's just how it works.
Would you recommend the PC version, like a Steam version, or would you recommend the console version of the special
At this
edition?
point, I feel like you can pick up on whatever you're comfortable with. If you prefer to game on PC, go ahead and get the PC version. The benefit of that is that you're going to have way more mods to play with, and the mods may run a little bit more stable, or maybe not. I don't. I mean, it all depends on your own game, your hardware system that you have, and what's required for the mods. Um, on the consoles, it's just as good there. They do have mods to make things look better, but you're going to be limited on what's there because people had to make the mods for the console specifically. They couldn't just port over the other mods very easily. There's still a ton out there, and people still constantly make stuff for it, but you're limited on what you can find. Um, and then online has like no restrictions on what you'll find. You'll find everything, anything. There's going to be family friendly restrictions on what you can get on the consoles. Um, so wherever you want to play, it's fine. Like right now I'm playing it again, but I'm not playing with any mods. I'm trying to get all the achievements. But even playing with mods, I'm kind of fine with playing it default because one thing I know is it's never going to crash. When you start playing with mods, you might get a really cool looking game. But I had one where I had to figure out which mod was breaking it to where every time I opened a door, it would crash. So I'm like, all right, you need to figure out the load order and this and that. So modding is a whole nother level of it that you have to get into. PC is like hardcore. You're definitely gonna like you'll get to the point where you probably want to make your own mods. Xbox or the console versions, they're plug and play mods. They'll all work, but if you load too many, maybe they will all work together. Happy with each other, you know.
Okay, now it's good to know because I've been looking into it. I'm just not sure which version to get, but I might just go. I mean, I feel like the base game without the mods is pretty good already. I feel like if you're gonna go with the mods, you've kind of gone through all the base content and you're just kind of looking for more. Personally,
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Skyrim fan and you've not killed Korshak or the snow giant ghost, which is the absolute highest level character in the game and the hardest thing to fight. I don't know anybody who's played it and actually fought against that guy. I've only seen videos of people who've done it online. Um, if you've done that, then you've done everything that you possibly can do in this game. If you haven't, trust me, there's a ton of shit in that game that you haven't even came across because you didn't bother to go in a cave or go here or go there. Um, the people who went that far, they're hardcore into it. Um, and the game's over 10 years old, and I still haven't done that yet. So I mean, there's plenty of stuff to find in this game and in this universe to have fun with. So my suggestion is go ahead and get Skyrim. If you don't have a copy of it already on your Switch or your Xbox or PlayStation or PC, feel free to get what's available now or go ahead and buy the next version of it. Um, you're gonna have fun no matter what. If you already have it, I don't think you need to keep buying it over and over again. I think the current versions that are out now are probably pretty definitive for whatever platform they're on. Um, PCs, I mean, most people did buy a special edition for PC because they had mods that already did all that stuff. They're still playing on the original uh, build of it, where most console people are on the special edition version because that's the revamped one that came out for us, right? So
yeah.
I say pick it up. You'll enjoy it. You'll have a great time. Any final thoughts on your end?
Uh, no, I just think it's a great game, great series. You can find the Morrowind version pretty affordable on Steam. It's usually going for about $15, but occasionally they go on sale for like $5, 7.50. So if you're a PC gamer, the Morrowind doesn't really have high spec requirements, so you can play it if you don't mind the more archaic nature of that game. Skyrim's also not as heavily demanding. You could even pick it up for 360 if you don't have a more modern console or anything beyond the 360. But I just don't recommend it on PS3 because it's definitely more buggy there. But you could also still pick it up on PC and even a pretty decent PC from like 2014. That's just like an office computer with a decent video card. And when I say decent, I'm talking like a gig or two at most. That'll still run it pretty well. So depending on your budget, depending on what you're trying to do, it's not demanding, which is a nice thing about the series.
Yeah, even when it came out brand new, it didn't feel like it was a game that demanded so much of you to have the right specs for it or be able to play it here or there. And it never feels like it's too much. So it's definitely an easy way to get somebody into. Hey, you want to play? Like, I'm not a D&D person, but like this is technically a D&D game without all the dice rolling and all the other kind of BS that they throw in there because it doesn't need it. It's you want to wake up and play a choose your own adventure game. Boom, Skyrim is it. That will give you everything you want. All right, so that's our show this week. I've been your host Ian and David here with us. You can find us at me at forthrightgaming.com and David, you have Timeless Cinema it's timelesscinema.com, right? Or the
Timeless Cinema Show. TimelessCinemaShow.com, yeah. But I'm also on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there at the handle of Timeless_Cinema. But I mainly talk with retro gamers a lot because that's kind of like my shtick, which I guess is why we're talking about Skyrim. But I just love great games, and I've been playing FMV games lately.
Oh yeah, I've been all over that stuff too. We'll talk about that later. That'll be the post show.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Happy gaming.